Hello, everyone, and thank you very much for joining today's podcast episode. We have an exciting topic today. We're going to be talking about launch in commercial and specifically in rare diseases. And I'm very, very pleased to be joined today by Andy Eckhout from Advanced Pharma, who's working in commercial excellence there. Andy, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you for joining.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Why don't you share a few words about yourself, what it is that you're doing, and how you came to get there?
Absolutely, absolutely. So thanks again for the invitation. A little bit about myself. So I'm from Belgium. I have a background, master degree in physical education, a postgraduate marketing degree. And then I was at that time a football player, so was really passionate about. And I had the chance to start as a sales rep. I had a friend, a teammate that was working for a pharmaceutical company, and that was talking about that. And he said, maybe that's something for you. You're very social. You like to engage with people. So that's how I started working in a pharmaceutical company at MSD at the time. So I started as a sales rep, became at quite early age district manager, sales manager, national manager, business unit director. And then I worked for a couple of companies last 22 years. So I think I've seen a lot of therapeutical areas. I've seen a lot of layers in the business, a lot of departments. So yeah, so it's a nice place to be at now in my career. Yeah.
Okay, a nice story. Now, a football colleague brought you into pharma. What made you stay? What tickles you?
Yeah, quite quickly I was intrigued by it. First of all, I must say at that time MSD was a great starting point. You're really well educated, so you learn in depth all about the therapeutical areas you represent. But they also teach you how to engage with physicians, and at that time that was new for me. For me, a physician was somebody really important, and maybe I would be afraid to reach out to him. But we were really well trained on that. So, and that's from the beginning. Those engagements with physicians was fascinating, especially at the point where you discuss really about patients and the issues they have, the solutions we can propose there. And at some point you realize that you don't have only a commercial role, but you also impact patients' life. And I think that was maybe the most motivating factor. Yeah.
And made you stay in this nice industry for quite a while.
Yeah.
Okay. Now at Advanced Pharma, you're responsible for commercial excellence.
Yeah.
It's a buzzword almost that we hear very often. What does it mean to you, commercial excellence?
Yeah. First of all, to be really precise, I'm part of the commercial excellence team. I think we have a fantastic team that was very recently built. I'm particularly responsible for CRM and digital solutions as part of that commercial excellence team. I think as a commercial team, we do so much. We are in the luxury position at Advanced Pharma to launch a lot of products. We have a great pipeline, a lot of upcoming launches. So commercial excellence for me is all the work to be ready to start promoting the product, and as from that point also to keep on supporting the local teams.
What are some of the ingredients for achieving commercial excellence? What do you need in your perspective to actually make that a reality?
Yeah, I think first the cross-functional aspect. You sit together with a broader team to define your strategy. I mean, from market access to the marketing, a lot of interactions with medical, because most of the time they do a lot of pre-launch activities. And based on all this information, you really sit together as a group and you build that strategy together. Really top line, and then to the tactics.
Okay. Now, it'd be amiss if I didn't ask, because Viva is a technology company, as you know. What role do you think does technology play in achieving commercial excellence or in supporting it, enabling it?
Yeah, I think a really important role, more than ever. I don't want to talk too much about COVID, but I think COVID changed it drastically. Prior to COVID, I think technology was important. The first thing comes in my mind is a CRM system. You want to keep track of all the information you gather, and for us CRM was very crucial. There are also other data management systems, of course, for other sources of data. But talking about technology, COVID completely changed that. I think as a lot of pharmaceutical companies were in a situation that, okay, we need to find other ways to interact because we cannot interact face to face with them anymore. So I think then technology was crucial to find other channels to interact with them. I must say with Viva, it was great partnering on that aspect to explore all opportunities there. So and they could also share honest feedback of the expertise of other companies. So was a good period. Yeah.
You mentioned before Advanced Pharma and kind of the strong launch pipeline that you're looking at, which is a good situation to be in, I guess.
Absolutely.
But tell us first of all a bit more about Advanced Pharma and kind of what's the story.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a unique story. I think I've worked now with a few companies from big to startups, and Advanced is really unique. So originally was a generics company, but last couple of years that whole approach has changed completely. So it's now full into innovative medicines, specialized generics, biosimilars, rare diseases. So it becomes a very interesting company, even more than before. But it's very complex also. So we are in a luxury position, but it's also very complex because you launch products in multiple areas, in areas where you have already expertise in, but also in others where it's really about exploring everything. So that makes it interesting, but complex and challenging sometimes.
Okay, but definitely a success and growth story that Advanced is writing. Now, let's talk a little bit about that launch aspect of Advanced Pharma, because you have launched quite a few assets in the recent past, and you are going to launch even more in the foreseeable future now. And that includes, as you said, a very broad variety of products from generics through biosimilars, but also to rare diseases, right? What are some of the ways that you're trying to meet the unique challenges of, for example, the rare disease space, which is an area you haven't been playing in the past, right? And which is very peculiar in the requirements and very different to, I guess, what the other areas you've been launching in the past are. So take us a little bit into that area of launching in rare diseases.
It's a great question. I think preparing a launch in rare diseases is so much more complex, but obviously a very interesting exercise to do so. With all respect, but if we launch a product where we already have the expertise, you kind of know what you need to do. You have a kind of a road book for that. For rare diseases, it's always exploring a little bit because you don't know the market, you don't know who the stakeholders are, you don't know always that much about the disease, so also that is a discovery. Also, you don't know really how the patients live with that particular disease. So all these aspects, before you start anything, you need to map out. Again, that's why I'm saying it's really a cross-functional work to prepare that kind of launch. Really, from a commercial point of view, we try to gather all that information and then see what's the best plan moving forward. Touching upon a few aspects of that, a targeting and segmentation exercise, for example, who are the physicians or key stakeholders you're going to target, is a difficult exercise. So, of course, there is market research you can do. You have your medical team that is out there and gathering all these insights. We lately have a lot of information coming out of Viva Link. So for us, Viva Link is a super interesting platform where we can, by searching all of these buzzwords related to the rare diseases, find a lot of information about the key stakeholders. So that helps us in defining that targeting and segmentation exercise. That's one aspect. Secondly, we also have a discussion on which channels are we going to activate to reach out to our customers. And in rare diseases, you need to explore. So as fast as we can, we're going to discuss with the key stakeholders and ask them the honest question: what's the preferred channel? Do you want to meet a lot face-to-face? Do you want to be invited to a lot of events? You want to receive emails? These kind of things. It's a little bit a mix of that all.
And what would you say is what is more challenging versus what is less challenging? So where do you spend most of your time or energy in terms of that preparation for the launch?
Maybe the most, and I think the collaboration with marketing, once we have enabled all of this channel, is building that customer journey and adding to that customer journey what are the the perfect key messages, what are the perfect topics of discussion, where can we as a company really make a difference for the patients. So to really be really precise on that, defining that is maybe the most challenging one. I think the most easy one is things that are related to what we do with other launches as well. So that's, I think we have a great team at Advance. So I mean, it's maybe arrogant to say, but I think we know what to do there. So that's, yeah, all the other aspects of a launch, I think we have quite under control. Yeah.
You mentioned this cross-functional nature, right? While preparing for a launch and then actually executing it. How complicated is that for you? We always hear a lot from the industry. There's silos, people working in silos and not collaborating. How are you doing this at Advance Pharma, and what's your secret recipe?
Yeah, it's maybe one of the reasons why I'm really happy to work at Advance Pharma is we have a lean structure. There were almost no silos, I would say. So it's always easy to go to all the departments. Also horizontally, there is almost no hierarchy. So you can jump at any moment to any person. You can sit together. So it's very easy to communicate with that. And even more, there are a lot of forums, cross-functional forums we organize to prepare, for example, launches, and where we all discuss this kind of thing. So it's great to be at Advance for that.
And I'm assuming that medical plays a key role in this, right? Now you're coming from a commercial side of things. Take us a little bit into the collaboration with medical. How do you perceive that also from a commercial side, and what may be some tricks of how to best collaborate with medical in such a launch setting?
Yeah, first of all, I've never seen before, and I think I can speak from experience in more than 20 years, such a close collaboration between medical and commercial. And the fact that there is also a medical excellence responsible person in Advance really helps to have that conversation. So coming back specifically on launches, it's maybe the period where we work mostly together just to make sure we are doing the right thing. They play a crucial role pre-launch. They gather so much insight, so much information, organizing so many events already, and they share that information. So what I've seen before is that, due to, and obviously often there are legal or compliance issues, but there's a lot you can share, and often there is a strict line between both, and that's not what I'm seeing at Advance, luckily. There is a good, healthy way of sharing that information, and that really helps us defining the strategy so much better, and to be really much more ready prior to a launch.
Now, along that process that you're working through with the colleagues, what isn't working well, or what can be done better, right, in preparing for such a launch? What are some of the ingredients that you think may still be missing or that you need to be working on?
I think it's sometimes lack of resources, I may say, because it's talking about launches, and again, we have a few, but don't forget also the ongoing business. And for me, that's sometimes maybe the most challenging one. You also have an ongoing business, so your field teams are prior to launch already promoting other drugs as well, and you need to keep on focusing on that as well. It's not that you're promoting a drug a few years already, that you don't need to invest in that. There are also always new channels you need to activate, new tactics you want to bring in place. So seeking the balance between both is to be fully focused and doing the right thing for a launch, but also keep on giving enough attention to the ongoing business is for me sometimes the most challenging one. Specifically looking at my own bucket of work, CRM and digital, that's a very demanding thing. People reach out to you always for new updates, for new requirements, and in the meantime, you are working on preparing everything for a launch. So,
that's a very interesting aspect. And now, looking at what you're going to do in the next years, right? There's more and more products going to be on market. Actually, how do you make that trade-off? How do you actually think about that? How do you prioritize?
It's an ongoing discussion, an ongoing prioritization exercise. The first step we do always at the global level to make that exercise, but I must say it's something we openly discuss with the countries. You see it often in companies, a top-down structure where you take decisions and countries just need to implement. I think at the global level, again, together with medical, we take certain decisions, or I would say we give certain guidance, and then we discuss with the countries. And they have the right, and there is the opportunity to push back. And then we can have a second discussion. But before we take a certain decision, it's based on a lot of interactions, and then we have the buy-in from different departments, but also from the countries. I think that is really crucial. Don't forget at Advanced Pharma, I think we have a commercial presence in 20 countries, and they each have a different approach. Not every country is the same, of course. So taking decision at the global level, you just need to make sure that it's feasible and it's practical, applicable in all of the countries.
Now, you've been mentioning that data plays a crucial role in preparing for a launch. And at Advanced Pharma, I think you're probably at the cutting edge of using reference data, but also deep data. You mentioned KOL, specific intelligence data, and using and preparing for a launch. Can you give a couple of examples of how you're actually doing that and how it is helping you with launching?
Yeah, so data is obviously crucial to prepare a launch. Physician data, but there's also the market, the disease area. You want to collect a lot of data, patient population, the patient journeys, all of that data is very crucial to define your strategy. Once you are in the period of launching, you set your KPIs that you defined based on the strategy and your tactics. I think it's crucial as from the beginning to also measure those because it gives you a direction, a flavor. Did you do the right thing? Did you set the right KPIs? Did you take the right decision? So from early stage, data plays a crucial role, and also measuring it. So we are very lucky also in our commercial excellence team. We have 2 dedicated people on reporting and analytics. So all the data that is coming in is being a little bit handled by them. And I think they're doing a very, very good job. Again, also analyzing data from the ongoing business, but then specifically during a launch and prior to a launch to do magical things with the data and give us the right insights.
And how you're applying the data? So you mentioned segmentation and targeting, for example. I'm assuming that's one of the core applications before launch. How does it help you to actually prepare for a successful launch?
Yeah. So targeting segmentation exercise is really important to set certain targets. So to define your product planning and your call planning. But as I was saying, it's crucial to measure as from the beginning. I mean, you do that exercise based on all the data you had before, but once you're out there, if I may say, in the field, you receive so many other input and so many other data. And you need to have that flexibility, also change that. So in CRM, we can easily adapt our targets and segmentation, adoption letters, etc. And we want to incorporate a lot of these measurement points where we do a kind of a status check. Are we still doing the right thing? Do we need to make certain adaptations? You need to be flexible on that as well.
Okay. Data is probably one of the most discussed topics in our industry, right? And for very good reasons. And there is a lot of data out there. Healthcare data in general is exploding. So it sometimes can be difficult to choose which data actually to use and which not. So where to look and what to ask the data. How do you think maybe a bit more generally about data? What would you wish for if you had access to certain types of data, or how will data become even more important for you or more useful?
What is maybe the most challenging today, what would be really helpful then as well, is you have external sources of data you gather to vendors, to market research that other people did, to other platform, and then you have the data you collect internally and that you have. I think if there would be a way to match those and to do analysis and to mix it, obviously we are working on that. As I said, we have 2 persons responsible for that, but that's challenging to combine those. I think maybe in a very near future, or maybe it's already ongoing, artificial intelligence can help us analyzing both sources of data, external and internal, and helps us making the right conclusions and giving us the right insights. So
So almost like what you're saying, almost like an industry taxonomy that lets data fit together.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and as you said, there is so much sources of data. At some point, you also need to cut it off. I mean, and take a decision based on the data we have today. We take certain decisions and we go for certain tactics and a certain strategy, because sometimes it can be overwhelming. Yeah, but I think the most important source of data remains the reactions of your stakeholders when you engage with them. I think that remains a super crucial piece of information, because they have the contact with the patient. They know exactly what is working, what is needed. So maybe that's the most important lesson for us. Based on all that information, if you don't know exactly what or which direction to go at, listen to the physicians, and that feedback is often coming from the field teams, MSLs and CAMs. Yeah.
And maybe last question on this, because you're saying a lot of internal data that is also coming from the field. Any thoughts on how to improve even the quality more that is coming from the field? Because a lot of discussion is usually also going on. What are we capturing? What are we not capturing? Right? And what insights can we draw from that?
Yeah. The question is, what are you capturing and where do you capture it? Often that crucial information coming from the fields. Obviously, we have our CRM for that. There used to be a time that everything was collected on pieces of paper, in Excel sheets, and that can be also dangerous, because there is also a certain way to collect data, and cannot be distributed and everything. So I think we've done a good job in setting up the CRM to capture the crucial data in a very compliant way, but also that it's afterwards easy to analyze. To give you two clear, tangible examples, we have a pre-launch module now in CRM. So when MSLs are in the field engaging with customers prior to a launch, there are certain pieces of information that we store in that pre-launch module in CRM, like in a certain important account or center of excellence, who is the leading physician, who are the prescribers, who is the influencer, who is the main pharmacist, and these kinds of things. And that's crucial. You do it in a very compliant way, and then afterwards it's very useful to use. But also the CAMs are using in a very compliant way the CRM in a very optimal way to gather all information, like enablers, barriers, adoption ladders, which we then try to fit in a customer journey.
And I'm also hearing quite cross-functional use then of a core system that brings everything together.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's crucial, because otherwise you ask a lot effort from the field teams to capture that data, but if then there is no use of it afterwards, it's really lost the effort.
Yeah. Now, Andy, you were talking about the field teams and as they're interacting with customers. There's other, and customers in your case actually can be different groups of people, right? So you've got, of course, on the one hand side, the physicians who are treating patients, but especially in rare diseases, there's more around this, right? There's nurses who are fairly important in this context. There's also caregivers and private caregivers who are important. Now, how do you engage, or how do you plan for this type of complexity in the healthcare professional space on your end?
Yeah. So in my end, from a CRM point of view, it's super crucial. As you mentioned, there are different types of stakeholders, and you have then the 20 different countries I just spoke about, where there is a different approach. Some of them are more tender-driven. Otherwise, it's retail pharmacy sales, just saying something. So you have different types of stakeholders and different types of models, commercial models in a country. I think from a CRM point of view, you need to set it up in the right way for those people. We had in the beginning a few struggles in some markets where other types of stakeholders, if I may, other type of stakeholders than HCPs were more important. And then in the beginning we had a little bit more struggles in CRM to have the database behind right. I think also again, great partnership with Viva to have that in place, talking specifically on payers and nurses to have into the system. I think the database we have is quite good. And if we are in a situation that some of the customers are missing, often different type of stakeholders, we create them now as grey record in a sort of advanced own database, because that's important. Those people interact with this type of the field teams are interacting with these different type of stakeholders. They need to capture that in the same way as we interact with physicians. Yeah.
Okay. So important to capture it all,
Yes.
but enable also your field teams
Yeah.
to be able to use technology with other customers.
Exactly. That's super important. Capturing data is one thing, but then you just need to make sure that all the channels you enable in your multi-channel or omni-channel approach, you enable them for all types of stakeholders.
Yeah.
So that's crucial.
We are on the topic of customers. I want to stay there just for a little bit longer and connect it to something you said earlier. The space is also becoming more competitive, right? So you're launching in rare diseases, but also rare disease is a very strong focus area for many other companies. So there is a certain level of competition. You're not acting in a vacuum. Now, within the realms of what you're obviously happy to share, but customer experience can be one very crucial differentiator also versus competition. How do you think about the customer experience that you're delivering, and what are you trying to achieve, or how do you want to make it better?
Great question. I don't want to talk too much about competition. I think it's always good to focus on yourself, but obviously, you realize it's important. I think that optimal customer experience is again based on the data you have and a certain tactic you put in place. At that point, when you start engaging with physicians, it's a simple thing as just asking feedback. It just afterwards, after a discussion, you can ask honestly feedback. Is this the topic you wanted to discuss? Is this the channel you like? Is there anything else? I think that open communication is super crucial, more than ever. So we are talking a lot about technology here, but I think it's also important, and we are doing that in our commercial excellence department as well, focusing a lot on training. I think it's super important to keep on training and investment in your field team people, and teaching them and learning them that it's okay to have that kind of interactions as well, because customer experience, as you say, is the most important one and can make then a difference again versus competition. So we are realizing that. I don't think we're doing it already in an optimal way, but we have a plan moving forward to improve that even better. Specifically now that we focus more on rare diseases, and that customer experience is super crucial.
And without going into specifics, but what are some of the core drivers for this experience that you want to work on? What are aspects that are in your focus or that are important to you?
Because we are speaking about rare diseases, there are a lot of unknown factors, as I told you already, for the patients, for the physicians, but also for us. So you're trying to do the right thing, the physician is trying to do the right thing, but I think that open communication is crucial there, more than ever, because there is, as I said, a lot of unknown factors there. I would say one of the examples is type of events you want to organize as an organization. I think we often organize big advocacy meetings or speaker meetings. Maybe for rare diseases, you want to do something completely different, and in a more really smaller setting. Really want to have highly scientific, high value discussions at a lower scale. I'm just saying something, but you need to have that conversation just to make sure you're doing the right thing.
So we were talking about customer experience, but also patient experience ultimately, right? And that may start actually earlier than with the treatment, potentially in a clinical trial or on the way there, diagnostics, etc. How are you thinking about kind of that fact that experience stretches is a journey, basically, and what are your thoughts on how to optimize it, maybe?
No, absolutely. So especially in rare diseases, and I'm not talking now for advance as such, I think all the experiences you have from clinical trials until the whole moment where you actually launch a new product are more than ever crucial. All of these aspects you really want to measure and see what the patient actually go through, what is the experience of the physicians. Often it's more than one specialty in a rare diseases. It's not that one specialty is focused on a specific rare disease. Often it's a cross specialty thing. So all that, those experiences are super crucial in that.
And building on these experiences, how do you pick them up potentially in your work, right? So how do you work with all this experience that has been gathered or also input that has happened before you actually come into play?
Yeah, so specifically for rare diseases, you build a patient journey from the moment it's diagnosed and all of the experiences with the treatment as such. You put that in a patient journey. I think that's an exercise after clinical trials that the medical teams are doing. And at some point, it's being discussed with our teams as well, with market access, with the commercial and marketing teams. And that analysis of that customer patient journey is really important, more than ever in rare diseases. As I said, many specialties are involved. That patient is going through a lot. So I think it's really important to analyze that. Afterwards, again, you know what your treatment or product can offer. If you want to have then better tactics afterwards in place, better key messages towards your stakeholders you engage with, it's super crucial to analyze that really in depth. Yeah.
Thanks. Now I want to ask probably one more question on looking forward, Andy.
Yeah.
What do you think is the next big thing in commercial in rare diseases that we should actually start doing? Let's start with a start question, and then maybe with a stop question. So what's the next big thing?
I think we should start doing asking more feedback to the people we interact with even more. I think at Advanced we are already doing that. I know you ask what start. I think keep on motivating to do so. Again, we all have as representatives of pharmaceutical companies the responsibility to improve patients' life, to impact patients' life. You need to have that in mind. So I think that's why we need to start and keep on interacting with the key stakeholders, just to make sure we are doing the right thing.
What would you stop doing?
Stop doing, and again, it's not necessarily something at Advanced. I think stop thinking in the classical way. Classical way is we need to interact X, Y, Z amount of times with our physicians. We need to give them X, Y, Z amount of key messages across. That classic approach that we used to do in the earlier times, stop doing that. I think we also need to stop thinking we need to put a multi-channel strategy in place and we need to enable these challenges. It's good to have multi-channel, omni-channel strategy in place, but again, referring to what we need to start doing, ask feedback. Is it the preferred channel? Is it the preferred communications or key messages you're getting? So for me, it's as simple as that, and it's an exercise that we do, and that I would say every pharmaceutical representative should do.
So much more customer-centric in rare diseases
absolutely.
Than maybe today.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Andy, thank you so much for speaking with me
It
today.
was a pleasure.
And for being here and for your time. And I'm looking forward to continue the conversation.
Absolutely, anytime.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.